behalf of Education Committee of SV Temple, it gives me great pleasure on all of your behalf to welcome Swami Tattwamayananda Maharaj Ji, who is visiting us from San Francisco. Many of you know that this is the second oldest Vedanta center established in United States way back in 1897 by none other than Swami Vivekananda. Today happens to be an auspicious day. It is the birth star of Sri Mahalakshmi, Panguni Uttiram, and the temple is very busy today. As you can see, there are a lot of devotees. There is a special Kalyana Utsavam at 7 p.m. So we have the Swami Vivekananda Day planned on a very auspicious day today. And it's our pleasure that Swamiji accepted our invitation to deliver as a lecture on Swami Vivekananda. Swamiji is a senior monk of the Ramakrishna order who has served in many centers in India. And he came here, I think about 4 years ago, Swamiji? In 5 years ago. He has been in San Francisco. He's a great Sanskrit scholar, has a very in-depth knowledge of many scriptures. And thanks to our Vedanta Center in Pittsburgh, his visit is made possible by their arrangements. He has been speaking on Brahma Sutras for the past 2 to 3 days, and today is the concluding lecture this afternoon at 5 p.m. On your behalf, once again, I welcome Swamiji. Please give me a big applause of welcome. I welcome you all. This morning, we will have the talk by Swamiji in the morning until 11:45, followed by question answers. Then we'll break for lunch. 12:30, around 12:45, we'll have the children's program, and that will be about an hour and a half or two. That includes the Vivekananda look-alike dress competition and also essay competition, and we have some nice prizes for the children, so we can see a lot more participation in the afternoon. Children are currently attending the Balavihar program. So with those few words, I will request Swamiji to proceed with his talk on Swami Vivekananda. Thank you.
My thanks to this temple authorities, the organizers, and my thanks to Mr. Srinivasan for his kind introduction. And it's a great joy and pleasure and honor to be invited to speak on Swami Vivekananda in this auditorium. Now, when we see this wonderful, beautiful temple and a large number of devotees gathering here to participate and take part in different rituals and ceremonies associated with this temple, our mind should go back to a memorable event that took place more than a century back in this country. You know, America is a unique socio-economic political experiment in the history of human civilization. For the first time, a new land was discovered by the adventurers and explorers who came from the other side of the big dam, came to this country and brought a new way of life, a new method of organizing things, the democratic system, which eventually evolved, the egalitarianism, the political democracy. All these are unique contributions of American nation. So, in 1893, the leaders of this nation decided to celebrate the 400th anniversary of the Columbus discovery of the new land in 1893. So as part of the celebration programs, they organized a parliament of religion. For the first time in the history of the world, all the great world religions and the delegates and representatives were brought on the same platform to create an occasion for engaging in an interfaith dialogue, for mutually learning and enriching. It was a very interesting and very singular event in the history of religious thoughts. Two events had preceded several centuries back. In 1567, there was an attempt in India under Akbar the Great to bring together different existing religions, but it did not take off because it was a kind of an effort to artificially create a mixture of different religious philosophical systems. So it did not take off. It's called Din Ilahi, the first attempt in modern times. Before that, of course, in early days, in ancient times, an attempt was made in India again during the time of Ashoka the Great, who brought together on a single platform the representatives of different denominations of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism in 3rd century BC. That also was practically a very localized event. But in modern times, it was the gift of America to the world of religious thought to organize an interfaith dialogue, interreligious dialogue for the first time, inviting the delegates and representatives of different religious traditions, different denominations of Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, of course, Jainism, Islam, Buddhism, and so on. On that occasion, there were many delegates, but the one important figure, the one figure whom we can never forget, and whose name modern historians of religious thought still remember and refer to and quote from, was Swami Vivekananda. And he came to this country not formally recommended by any particular religious denomination. He was requested to come to this country to represent Hinduism by a number of kings and eminent men in India, but he was not officially introduced as an official delegate of Hinduism. So practically he came as an unknown monk. And his speech made him an unforgettable celebrity. In fact, his name still is the only name that is remembered. In fact, I attended the Parliament of World Religion in 2015 in Salt Lake City, last 2015 October. The only great religious preacher among those who participated in the first interreligious dialogue in 1893, whom the organizers quoted, whom they referred to, was Vivekananda. Because Vivekananda did not speak on behalf of any particular church or any particular denomination. He spoke on behalf of the whole humanity. And he spoke on behalf of the entire spiritual heritage of humanity. He spoke on behalf of a religious ideal that did not recognize boundaries of nationality, race, culture, or religion. He spoke on behalf of the spiritual heritage of humanity. So all these temples that we are witnessing in this country today, the gatherings of the great devotees, devoted people who come to these temples, all these would not have happened if Vivekananda had not come to this country in 1893. Because the way he interpreted Hinduism, the way he expounded Hinduism is still remembered as, as an immortal contribution to the evolution of world religious thought. He said the essence of religion is spirituality. And this spirituality is a natural culmination of our pursuit in search of truth. Every religion has to go through 4 levels, 4 stages of evolution. We begin with rituals, ceremonies, they are very important. And we also slowly progress and evolve towards mythologies and philosophy. But when we reach spirituality, when we reach the spiritual experience, then all religions meet, converge on one central point. There cannot be unity or oneness at the level of rituals, ceremonies, and mythologies, or even philosophical systems. But when we realize that God lives in the hearts of everyone, that God is one all-pervading spiritual divine reality, then we start looking upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family. Not only humanity, the whole creation is seen and experienced as one spiritual family. This is the essence of religion. Here you are talking about an experience that is possible in all religious traditions, but frequently forgotten. When we look beyond the conventions, the customs, and external forms of practices, we find a universal spiritual humanism, an ideal of universal spiritual humanism in all world scriptures. When we evolve, going beyond rituals, ceremonies, external practices, mythologies, and philosophical systems, when we reach the experience level, then we all become better human beings. This was a unique religious paradigm that Swamiji gifted to this world. And when Vivekananda when he came to this country, religion itself was facing a big challenge from different quarters. The humanists, the evolutionists, the neo-positivists, many modern critics of religion had already started criticizing many of the exclusive claims of established religions. But when Vivekananda came to this country, when he spoke on behalf of one universal spiritual ideal, universal spiritual humanism, the whole world listened to that. It was a unique contribution to world religious thought. It is a synthesis of all the positive elements of world religions. It's a synthesis of science, technology, and modernism on one hand, and traditional spiritual values on the other. Now, this has got a special importance in modern times. In modern times, we sometimes forget the sacred values of traditional Hinduism. Traditional Hinduism has kept and preserved a sacred treasure: the institution of family life, the institution of kinship, the natural respect among the children for the parents, and the affection of parents towards the children. All these constitute the treasure of India's spiritual heritage. Swamiji wanted all these values to be preserved, and they should be enriched, and they should be complemented by modern American values like innovation, egalitarianism, self-reliance, the willingness and the fearlessness to take risk, initiative. So this was a very wonderful religious paradigm that Swami Vivekananda gifted to the world, which has got a special relevance to our times. I am tempted to quote from a convocation address that is found in Taittiriya Upanishad. You know, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, there is an interesting convocation address. Students, after going through a long period of Vedic education, are returning to their homes to start their life as citizens of the country, as ideal members of society. They are given a set of instructions. Vedam anuchya acharya andevasinam anushasti satyam vada dharmam chara satyana pramadidavyam dharmana pramadidavyam. It is the first set of instructions. After having received Vedic education, students are returning to their homes to marry, to become husbands and wives. Of course, we have to remember, women were also given Vedic education in ancient times. As many of us, perhaps very often, many of us forget this part. Some of the greatest saints of Vedic times were women. Maitreyi and Gargi of Brihadaranya Upanishad, Suloma, Ushasta, many such great women saints and philosophers are mentioned and referred to in the Vedic literature. So, after receiving Vedic education, they are returning home. And instructions begin like this: Satyam vada dharmam chara satyana pramadidavyam dharmana pramadidavyam. These are all very well known. You should speak the truth, you should practice dharma, you should not deviate from the path of dharma and truth. And then he says, Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Adithi Devo Bhava. 4 values which have preserved the sanctity of India's cultural heritage. You should respect and honor your parents as much as you honor God Himself. And you should respect and honor the teacher and the guest as much as you respect and honor God Himself. A number of instructions are given. Now, Swami Vivekananda wanted this sacred treasure of India's cultural heritage to be preserved, to be kept intact. At the same time, Swamiji was a great critic of orthodoxy and conservatism in their negative manifestations. Sometimes, clinging fast to an ancient heritage could make us obscurantist and backward looking, blocking all innovations, all new ideas. I can give an example. Some of my friends in San Francisco, 45-year-old people who had lost jobs, they still take instruction from their parents at home, whether they should switch over from Google to Intel or not. Now, this is one negative aspect of a traditional conservative culture, which Vivekananda wanted us to break away from. At the same time, Swamiji wanted that we must preserve some of the sacred values of an ancient culture. This culture has preserved the sanctity of family relationship, the sacredness of human relations, the kinship among different members of the family. At the same time, it also can degenerate into a kind of obscurantism, conservatism in its most negative manifestation, blocking all new ideas, innovations, stifling our willingness to take new ideas, stifling our willingness to take risk. So, what Vivekananda wanted was a harmonious blending of the best of the traditional, the best of the Oriental, the best of India's traditional heritage, and the best of modern Western culture. See, modern Greco-Roman culture has made a great contribution to the totality of human civilization. The adventurous spirit, the democratic spirit, the freedom and self-reliance and self-confidence, and the willingness to experiment with new ideas, the innovativeness. All these are positive values which perhaps Indian community can learn and enrich by taking from Western culture. At the same time, they should be careful about preserving their own sacred values of their heritage, like family values, respect for tradition, respect for the ancient heritage. So Swami Vivekananda made a memorable statement, what we want today is a harmonious blending of the best of modern Greco-Roman culture and the best of our own traditional heritage. It's a very interesting and very creative paradigm of life as a whole. This is Vivekananda's special relevance to our times with regard to Indian diaspora. But he made a far greater contribution to the world at large. When Vivekananda came to this country, as I mentioned earlier, if we observe the philosophical and cultural landscape of America at that time, it presented a very interesting scenario. Transcendentalism of Emerson, Thoreau, and Whitman had made a great impact on the mindset of modern American elites at that time. Theosophical movements and many Christian Science movement, many of these new experiments in religious and cultural life, have already made inroads to America's cultural landscape. So the scene was ready for America to receive a new religious paradigm from the Oriental culture. But there was something that was found, it was lacking in Western understanding, Western definitions of religion. In Abrahamic tradition, unfortunately, it's a great religious, spiritual ideals were there, but frequently it was overshadowed by the tyranny of dogmatism. When Vivekananda came to this country, he taught the people that your religion may be different from my religion, but that doesn't make your religion wrong. You may follow a different form of worship. You may take a different path, a different road to God. But that path is equally valid path as my religion. Your religion may be different from my religion, but that doesn't make your religion wrong. So the idea that God is the center, like the top of the hill, and there could be any number of trails and tracks leading up to the top of the hill. This was a new idea that Swami Vivekananda contributed to religious world, and that is very, very relevant today. The idea that the goal is one, but there could be as many paths as possible leading to that goal. When we reach the experience dimension of religion, then we look back from the top of the hill, then you find there are so many roads that various people are taking to reach the top. But for that, we should reach the top. The top of the hill is experience. So if you can think of religious life as climbing a hill, you find the top of the hill represents experience. Every form of ritual, every system of philosophy, every mythology is only a preparation to reach this ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is experience. When we reach that stage of evolution, when we reach the experience dimension, then we look upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family. There's a very interesting dialogue in the Bhagavata Purana. It is auspicious to refer to Bhagavata Purana in a temple which is historically linked to the great spiritual heritage of Sri Ramanujacharya. So, in the Bhagavata Purana, there is a very interesting dialogue which highlights Vivekananda's doctrine of universal religion and practical Vedanta. These are two of his unique contributions to world religious thought. The idea that all religions contained the essence of spirituality. If you look beyond the diversity of conventions, traditions, external practices, and socio-anthropological factors, if you go deeper, if you get to take an insight, you'll find in every sacred religious scripture there are some great teachings which are universal and which are spiritual, which are relevant for all times and for the whole humanity. We do not recognize the boundaries of religious or racial differences. Now, in the dialogue is between 9 sages and a king. The king's name is Nimi, so it's called the Nimi Navayogi Sambadaka. Means a dialogue between a great philosopher king called Nimi and 9 sages. It comes in the 11th skandha, 2nd chapter of Bhagavata Purana. 9 sages once made a visit to the court of a philosopher king called Nimi. Kavir Khavir Andariksha Prabudha Pipalayanaha Avir Hotroda Drumilas Chamasa Karabhajanaha. These are names of 9 sages. Kavi, Hari, Andariksha, Prabudha, Pipalayana, Avihotra, Drumila, Chamasa. So 9 sages. In ancient times, in India, great sages used to travel from place to place, instructing people, and frequently instructing even kings and emperors, visiting their courts, their palaces. And whenever they visited the kings or the courtiers used to put to them some philosophical, spiritual questions. That's the glory of ancient India. So when these 9 sages came to King Nimi, Nimi asked them 9 questions. And to each question, each of the 9 sages gives an answer. The questions are how to reach God, who is an ideal devotee of God, how to practice spirituality in modern times, and so on. One important question that was put to Antariksha, the third of the 9 sages, was this: who is an ideal devotee? Who is an ideal human being? Or how to become an ideal, cultured, civilized, religious person? This is a question that is put to Antariksha. So in answer to this question, this sage gives an answer. In 3 verses, he gives 3 levels of human evolution in spiritual life. The first verse is this: Sarvabhudeshu ye pasyet bhagavad bhavam atmanaha bhudani bhagavadi atmani esha bhagavadottamaha. Bhagavata Purana is a sacred scripture for all Vaishnava devotees, for Vaishnava tradition, to which Ramanuja belongs. So, Sarva Bhudeshu ye pasyet bhagavad bhavam atmanaha. He is an ideal devotee. He is an ideal cultured human being who sees the presence of God in everyone and who experiences the presence of everyone in God. So, you should be able to see the presence of the Divine Lord in everything, and you should be able to see the presence of everything in this world in God. Seeing one in all and seeing all in one. When you reach this level of spiritual evolution, you become a cosmopolitan person. You become a really spiritual person. Before that, we may be a religious person. Religion becomes spirituality when we evolve from mythology and external practices to spiritual experience. When we get spiritual experience, when we actually not believe in but really experience the presence of Lord everywhere, then it is called spiritual experience. So, Esha Bhagavadottamaha, meaning Bhagavadanam Uttamaha. He is the most evolved devotee. He is the most wonderful devotee. He is the dearest one to me. This is the answer given. Then, coming down several steps, the sage continues his discussion. all people cannot reach this level of spiritual evolution all of a sudden. It takes time. What about those who are still in the process of evolving, progressing in spiritual life? There are people who are not always able to see God everywhere. But they go to temples, as we all do. We meditate, we pray, we read scriptures, any of the sacred scriptures of the world. But we may not have reached the highest level of spiritual experience. We are still in the process of evolving and progressing. What about them? Then Antariksha says, he says, Ishware tadadhineshu bariseshu dishutsucha prema maitri kripa upeksha yakkarodi samadhyamaha. Those who have not reached the highest level of spiritual evolution, where they are able to see the presence of God everywhere, where they are able to look upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family, such people can reach that stage by practicing certain disciplines. They should be devoted to God, and they should be compassionate towards other devotees of God. They should be friendly with fellow devotees. They should have sympathy for those who have not reached that stage but want to reach. And they should keep a long distance from certain types of people whose association may drag us away from our own spiritual path. That way, Ishware tadadhineshu bariseshu dishutsucha prema maitri kripa upeksha. Devotion to God, a friendly feeling towards fellow devotees, sympathy for those who have not been able to make much progress but who are good people, and a long distance from skeptics, people who may take us away from our spiritual path. There are some people whose association may give us a feeling of skepticism, self-doubt, which are very harmful in our spiritual life. So we should keep a long distance from them. Then Antariksha says, beyond that, there are certain people. They are not wrong, but then they belong to the preliminary level. Archayameva haraye pujam cha saddhaye hadi nachat bhakteshu cha anyeshu yakkarodi saprakritaka. Then there are some devotees, they think when they go to a temple or a church, they practice religion. Outside the temple, outside the church, they don't worry about spirituality or religion. So religious life or spiritual life is confined to a few hours every day or every week. When we read a scripture, when we are inside a temple, we are spiritual. Outside the temple, we are not spiritual. So we draw a line of demarcation between the secular and spiritual. They are not wrong, but they belong to the first stage of evolution. So what Swami Vivekananda said was this: we have to begin with the external practices, mythologies, belief in philosophical systems, but we should always aim at reaching the highest level of spiritual experience. When we reach this spiritual experience, we find that the whole humanity is one in a spiritual meaning, in a spiritual sense, the essential unity and oneness of creation. The fact that God is present in everything and everywhere. This ideal is realized, and Vivekananda gave it the name universal religion. It's a religion that goes beyond all conventional religions. It is a level of spiritual experience which looks upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family. Then we cannot hate anyone. We cannot love God, worship God, and simultaneously hate anyone or do harm to anyone or hurt anybody in the world. that becomes universal spiritual humanism. When we practice this in our life, it is called practical Vedanta. These are two distinct contributions of Vivekananda to world religious thought: universal religion and practical Vedanta. When universal religion, which is kind of universal spiritual humanism, when it is applied in everyday life, then every act becomes an act of worship. Every word becomes a sacred mantra. Every thought becomes a meditation. And the whole world becomes an expression of the divine. This Vivekananda called practical Vedanta. Now, these two ideas put together, universal religion and practical Vedanta, become a unique religious paradigm. Today, you find in many of the civilized parts of the world, when we discuss religion and spirituality, you cannot tell anyone that your religion is the only true religion, all other religions are wrong. This new trend of looking upon other religions as equally valid paths leading to the same goal, namely God, it all began with the first Parliament of Religion that was held in 1893 as part of the Columbian Exposition, the celebration of 400th anniversary of Columbus' discovery of America. And the person, the man who first articulated this ancient message of India, Vedic tradition, was Vivekananda. That is his unique contribution. Another very interesting contribution that Swami Vivekananda made to modern world was the concept of synthesis, harmony between cultures, traditions, Oriental and Occidental. That is also a unique contribution he made. Swamiji says that every nation, every society in this world can and should make and does make a unique contribution to the totality of human civilization. Every society, every nation has something unique to contribute to the totality of human civilization. India's uniqueness, according to Vivekananda, was that in spite of thousands of years of social cataclysms, political anarchies, at least for centuries, India managed to preserve this sacred heritage of its culture and tradition, because it's believed in the immortality of the supreme reality. I can just refer to one statement that Swamiji made. After his first visit to this country, Swamiji returned to India in 1897. He landed in Colombo. He gave a lecture in Columbus in the Floral Hall in Colombo. That's in 1897, January 15 or 16. In that speech, Swamiji makes a very interesting statement, which gives us an insight into the mystery of Indian culture, uniqueness of India's spiritual heritage. And also it gives us an insight into the positive contribution of Western civilization. Swamiji says, if Manu returned to India today, he won't find himself in a strange land. He won't be bewildered. He won't find himself in a strange land. That is Swamiji's statement. Manu was an ancient lawgiver. Manu Smriti is the most ancient among the 18 Smritis. Smritis are, like constitutions. We have 18 Smritis. Each Smriti gives a set of rules and regulations that used to guide Indian society in various aspects of family life, social life, and national life. So you find Drupa Dharma, Vikti Dharma. You find Dharma means set of values to be practiced by the king, by householders, by monks, by people in all stages of life. It's called Smriti. So the most ancient and the most important of these Smritis, constitutions, called Manu Smriti. He may have lived around 3000 BC, 3rd millennium BC. There, Swamiji says, if that ancient lawgiver who lived in 3rd millennium BC had visited India in 1897, he will find the same ancient Vedic culture being preserved in India. Swamiji says. Now, to get a real picture of the importance of this statement, you can make a comparative study of different civilizations in the world. See, Egyptian, Sumerian, Aztec, Mayan, thereof later civilizations, Greek, Roman, Sumerian, Assyrian, all the ancient civilizations, let us say. Today, nobody knows how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids, the technology they used to preserve the mummies, the technology they used to construct these huge temples, huge pyramids, huge blocks of rock kept in such perfect precision and accuracy. The genius that built these huge pyramids. What was the technology they used? We don't know much about it. But if you go to India, our ancient architecture, our ancient music, many of our ancient martial arts, the Vedic literature, many in our arts and sciences, more or less, not completely, there are problems, still more or less are still being preserved. Swamiji says this was made possible by a unique mechanism of Indian culture, that the tradition of Acharya and Avatara Parampara, we call heritage. A succession of great teachers who came from the past, who preserved by taking up the best from the past and reinterpreting it and passing over to the next generation. We call them Acharyas or Avatars. This was a unique social mechanism that worked to preserve India's cultural heritage. And this is something unique in India's case. Swamiji says, but then just blind belief in some glorious past will not be enough to preserve your culture. You have to move with times. You have to imbibe the positive elements of modern scientific, technological culture. You have to use the latest technology, latest methods of organization, leadership skills. All these are needed. But at the same time, while making use of all these modern tools, we should not forget the ancient heritage. So a harmonious synthesis, a blending without friction, a harmonious blending of the best of the traditional and best of the modern. That's another unique contribution the Swami Vivekananda made to the world, made to India's culture, or let us say the very paradigm of life in modern times. So remembering Swami Vivekananda is an act of gratitude on our part for a person who articulated ancient Hinduism in the language of our times. When you read Swami Vivekananda, you find even an agnostic or an atheist can find many things acceptable in Vivekananda's interpretation of religion, which is not true with regard to many of the traditional interpretations of old religions, because God and religion are both getting a bad name in our times, mostly because of so many injustices happening in the name of God and religion. But Vivekananda, in the midst of all this, Vivekananda came to modern times and presented Vedanta and Hinduism as a universal spiritual humanism. The art of looking upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family. The art of combining worshipping God in a temple or a church and serving humanity side by side. We cannot love and worship God on the one hand and hate the rest of humanity on the other. We both cannot go together. So if you are spiritual, that spirituality should find its expression in every act we do, every word we speak, every thought we think. So that every thought becomes a meditation, every word becomes a sacred mantra, every act becomes an act of worship, and the whole humanity becomes an expression of God in visible form. It is the highest and most evolved and most refined form of universal spiritual humanism, by way of interpreting the most ancient spiritual heritage known to mankind in the language of modern universal humanism, which cannot be contradicted even by a cutthroat humanist, a cutthroat radical humanist, or a cutthroat atheist and agnostic. There are many people today who criticize religions, but I don't think any civilized, well-educated person could find fault with Swami Vivekananda's interpretation of Hinduism as universal spiritual humanism. Even you can be spiritual even without believing in God. This is a great statement in Vivekananda, which you find even an agnostic can agree with. The statement in Swami Vivekananda, I'm quoting this. You live your life in such a way that God will accept you even if you do not accept Him. That means God is not bothered whether you certify His existence. God is not such a miserable being that He cannot live in this world without your acceptance or your recognition of His existence. Rather, if you live a spiritual life and if you still do not believe in God, God will accept you. His acceptance of you doesn't depend upon your acceptance of His ontological reality. So it's such a wonderful universal humanism which blends together the most rational philosophy of our times and the most ancient spiritual heritage of humanity. That is a unique contribution. So his message is very relevant today because it helps us to look beyond the boundary lines of faith, race, and nationality. It helps us to look at the whole humanity as one spiritual family. Thank you. So now we will have interaction maybe for about half an hour. I'll be happy to respond to your questions to the best of my ability. Thank you. Namaskar.
Any questions? No questions? Yes, go ahead.
No, that's right. But still, I often am tempted to look upon that the half of the glass that is full rather than the other half which is empty. So, I want to begin with one very interesting experience in my own life. I am from the Bay Area. I'm from San Francisco. Now, I have observed something very interesting in San Francisco. If you compare the Indian diaspora, say there are those who are below 45, who may have come to this country in 90s or maybe during the last 15 years, you compare them with those who came in the late 60s or early 70s, there is a great difference, and that is very promising. If the difference is something very interesting. Many modern Indians who are maybe around, I don't just give a ceiling, just around 45 or below, they are very proud of India's heritage, spiritual heritage, and they have imbibed some of the best values of modern professional management, efficiency, leadership skills, all that you find. On the other hand, I have come across many Indians, if you don't mind, who came late 60s and early 70s. They came to this country when India was poor and playing with socialism and things like that. So at that time, India's growth rate was something 2.5%. Hindu growth rate 2.3% or something. So you can see a difference, a confidence, as if a kind of an upright feeling. A tendency to feel proud of India's ancient heritage, still imbibing modern professional work ethic, professionalism, leadership skills of mostly American, American business culture. That is something. So often I felt that Swami Vivekananda's arrow has hit the mark in some ways. Here you should not misunderstand. I am not drawing a line between this and that. But I find a large number of young Indians who are very proud of our heritage, our cultural heritage, and very positive. As for the lack of activism that you mentioned, that is true. There is still not enough of activism, but still, see this temple, after all, is holding this program, There are many temples who won't even do that. So I must pay tribute to Venkateswara temple here in Pittsburgh for remembering Vivekananda. So that is something really wonderful, which I congratulate them for. In the Bay Area, the temples which often they do that. Bigger temples, very rich and they won't do that. So I would say there are many temples who are trying actually, who have already started trying and already made long strides, positive steps in the right direction. There are who are yet to make an effort. So there is an attempt on the part of many institutions, Hindu institutions, to defend and also to preserve our ancient culture. And again, among many of the young IT professionals whom I meet in the Bay Area, there is a very strong tendency to take a lot of pride in our cultural heritage. On the other hand, some of the old people who came late 60s, they're still very skeptical. Maybe because that was a time when India was economically poor. But today's India is not poor. Today's India makes many people proud of its economic position. That could be the reason for it, whatever may be. So often I feel Vivekananda's dream of blending together the best of the Greco-Roman tradition of his American culture is a part, a manifestation, the efficiency, professionalism, work ethic, and a sense of pride in our national heritage. It is happening. Maybe it is not happening fast enough, but it is happening. This is my take, my understanding of it. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. No, you know when you
If I may add something to that, and I don't mean to be argumentative. If we fast forward to Mahatma Gandhi,
yeah
Mahatma Gandhi was such a revolved spiritual person, but he blended the fight for freedom at the same time social reform, and he was an activist in the real sense
yeah
of, of Hinduism.
yeah
And what you said, I'm one of those generations. I came in the early 70s.
yeah
But all the more reason that if we have been able to settle down in this country, all the more reason to give back and get involved in issues that affect not only our generation, our children, but society at large. So, what Kunal just said, and my request to you is, what inspiring words that you can offer that Hindus should not just sit on their comfortable houses, but actually get involved for their own good and for the good of society at large, which is what Hinduism is all about.
yeah
Thank you.
yeah. That's no. You are right. You know, for example, environmental consciousness and fighting for social justice. Now, when you are living in a foreign country, may not be foreign, of course, foreign in culture, maybe, but still you are you are American citizens. No, you cannot sit quiet in your own little small cells without joining the mainstream. If Hindus constitute a very well-educated, influential, affluent community, so they have to join the mainstream, maybe for protection of environment, conservatism of, for conserving nature. They cannot just keep away from that. It's not possible for them. It's wrong also to keep away from it. They should join the mainstream. In fact, there are many great teachings in even Vedic literature which proclaim uh, that it's our duty to keep the nature, air and water and oceans, valleys and mountains in a state of purity and totally undisturbed by pollution. You know, it is our duty. It's a sacred duty. It is against dharma to pollute air and water. Such ideas are there. I mean, I'm not just quoting from an ancient scripture. There is a tendency for us, what is there about environmental protection, Vedic literature. But there are teachings there, you know. There are. So I think it's the duty of Hindus to join the mainstream in the struggle for conservation, or keeping the air, keeping the environment pure. I don't think it is either possible or desirable to keep away from mainstream. One should become part of the mainstream. Otherwise, you cannot even survive as a as a conscious, uh, self-reliant community. There'll be no rationale for your recognition in social structure. So one should be part of the mainstream in every way possible. I have come across quite a few members from Hindu community who are very active in the mainstream. Many of these interfaiths, in the conservation of nature, in fighting for keeping the air and water pure. I have come across quite a few activists from different organizations and movements who are very active. Of course, I'm from different. Maybe it may be different from place to place, but the place I'm coming from, I'm coming from very many people who are very active in various areas. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe to take on this, I have a dream. And that dream is that every child, so you see Catholic schools everywhere, and they are basically educating right from the childhood. People are going there, they get written class every day almost, and that's how they're propagating the thought, if you will, of Catholicism. Why is it we as Hindus, we pay so many taxes,
Yeah. No, you're right. Running schools is a good step in the right direction. And but then there is another way of looking at it. We get, frequently we have school visits from different schools in the Bay Area. About 50, 60, or 40 students visit our temple in San Francisco, and they are all attending classes on world religion. So many of these schools have got a program. They should visit a temple and they listen to an authority on Hindu religion when they are learning Hinduism in their classrooms. Mostly they read that well-known book written by Houston Smith, which is one of the better books written in that area. Now, if one of the questions that frequently the students put to me is this: how is it possible for Hindus? See, they have been here and they are very influential, and they are able to preserve their culture so well compared to other migrant communities. They they look at it from another perspective. They are comparing Hindus with maybe Chinese, Korean, Japanese. They say Hindus have been so successful in preserving their religious culture, even in alien nation, alien country. So they give a different perspective, and they rather admire and show their appreciation. That's something very interesting, because they say, see, in Hindu families, children still, to some extent, respect their parents. And there are Hindu organizations like Chinmaya Mission, many organizations which teach all these to young children, So they do that. So they say, how is it possible that this ancient culture is able to preserve its values, especially the sanctity of family, institution of family, which they are able to do much more effectively than many other migrant communities, they say. So there's another perspective. There are people who rather show appreciation for Hindu society, for being able to preserve their traditional heritage, even alien country scenario. So if you start running schools, that's a very wonderful thing. That's true. At least as a part of these temples, huge temples, well organized and run by very enlightened, well-educated people who have in fact imbibed the best of modern management skills, which is part of American culture, and also a strong faith in traditional Hinduism. They can do much more than perhaps what they are doing right now. They are the best equipped people to run schools. See, in our case, take San Francisco Vedanta Temple. Our society goes back to 1897. And the first temple we built in 1905. So we started long before Indian migration started to America. Long before. So our congregation was exclusively American till about 75 or 74, 75. Exclusively American, huge American congregation. So this is a new trend, the Indians migrating large numbers and contributing this country. So now there are new demands, new compulsions, new requirements. That is fine. So perhaps starting schools is a good step in the right direction, especially as part of these huge temple complexes. In fact, there is a large American community who appreciate these big, gigantic temples. They say it's a great contribution, they say. So as part of these temple activities, you can start schools. Need not be formal schools like Sunday schools. Every Sunday you can make arrangement for parents to send their children. It need not be a formal school. The way it takes a lot of paperwork and a lot of legal requirements and many other bureaucratic hurdles. So you can have an informal school, students gathering, and you can invite senior members of the community to teach them scriptures. If not scriptures, at least some fundamental values drawn from the scriptures. This is one positive step in the right direction. Temples can make a great difference, I believe. This is my view with regard to this. We monks are very few in number, just a few. The whole Ramakrishna Mission, Vedanta Society together, less than maybe 20 or less. So you can imagine. But there are thousands of, tens of thousands of well educated, very enlightened, very competent members of Indian community who can do a lot more work than they are doing right now. That's my view in this matter. Yeah. Yeah. You know, well, we should not give a very ultra nationalistic interpretation of Hinduism. Because, especially when you address youngsters who are born in this country, who are educated in schools, moving along with other members, you know. So they will ask you question, why should you respect your parents or grandparents? They will ask this question. So you should teach them, you know, every nation, every culture has its own uniqueness. See, an American, even as a big CEO, won't hesitate to take up menial job if he loses his job, and will work out all the way right from beginning. See, a CEO of a big multinational, if he loses his job, will start tomorrow, he'll go to Trader Joe's and start packing things. And within 1 year, he will build up himself, which the Indian will not do. And if an Indian starts driving Uber or start packing in Trader Joe's, his family members in India, they will excommunicate them in families. There will be serious problems in family life. There will be divorces. Even children will disown them. It has happened. It's happening right now. An American won't bother. He may be a big CEO, but he's willing to take risk. And such a wonderful dignity of labor. See, Vivekananda praised so much. He didn't find that in Europe. You know, British members of the House of Lords are much more protective of the status than the most conservative Orthodox Hindus. So America found, Swamiji found in America something unique, the dignity of labor. You find an American proclaiming loudly and with pride, I'm a barber. Does an Indian do that? He will be so apologetic. He will almost hide his job. But an American is proud openly. I'm a gardener. I'm a cook. A sense of pride. Now that you should teach Indian children. This positive element, which they don't do. At the same time, one serious problem, that is the problem of family life. So much of anarchy. An Indian's family life is so over-organized that often grandchildren will ask grandparents' permission to join which college to go. Is so over-organized. On the other hand, in America, the public life is so well over-organized and family life is so disorganized. In India, public life is so completely disorganized and family life is so over-organized. The tyranny of hierarchy, you know. So a 90-year-old grandfather will tell a 65-year-old father, I know, who are you to teach me? A 90-year-old man sitting on the bed, lying on the bed, will dictate terms to a 65-year-old father of 5 children, 6 children. He may be himself a grandfather. So the tyranny of seniority, so stifling, strangulating. It practically stifles the whole energy out of the system. So family life, traditionally, things are changing, is so over-organized in India. And public life is so disorganized, so anarchic. Here, public life is so well organized and family life is in complete anarchy. So we have to combine the best of both. Maybe that's the best way to do that. So, okay. Yeah.
to reserve our own culture, our own heredity, and our own religion. There was only one store, Indian store, that was not Indian, Chinese store. You can buy ginger there. That was the way in 1962,
Yeah.
American. Today is 1917. But one thing I regret in my family, that I could not give that spirituality or religion to my grandchildren. I could not, I am very failure in that respect. I am frustrated for that, that I could not do that. They go to school, they learn. But when my daughter went to school, they had a identity crisis. They had it that time, but now we don't have any identity
Yeah.
crisis.
So that's a positive development, you know. So when we talk to the new generation, we should insist on this point: learn all the best of American Western culture, only the best. And I have found that many senior American academics whom I talk to, I discuss with, they highly appreciate those Indians who have preserved their cultural heritage. On the other hand, if an Indian comes and tells an American, well, we have nothing in India, we have nothing, no, they have contempt for you. Because you don't, when a beggar comes to your home and tells you we have nothing, may I stay with you, you won't allow him to enter your drawing room. On the other hand, a person who has his own home, his own heritage, visits you, you welcome him. So Americans respect you when you have self-respect yourself, because they are a nation, they evolved like that, out of self-reliance, self-respect. For that they came. After all, the Calvinists and these Huguenots and all these people who have to fight with the conservative Anglican Church clergy who came to this country from England or maybe Holland, they came here for self-respect. So if you show self-respect, they respect you. If you tell them you have nothing, so I want to join you, they have contempt for you. So that we must teach new generation. You preserve your culture. You should have something in your pocket, then they accept you. If your pockets are empty, culturally speaking, if you disown your own roots, why should they respect you? So that's the lesson we have to teach the new generation. Self-respect in the true American sense. You should have something to contribute. They accept you. If you have nothing to contribute, why should they accept you? You don't, when a beggar is walking in the street, you don't just allow, come and stay with you. You don't allow him that. So everyone should preserve his or her roots. Then you are recognized. Okay, please come.
Yeah, last question.
Yeah.
Whenever I ask my Indian friends at school if they celebrate a holiday, they're always like, "What is that holiday?" They don't even know what the holiday is. Do you think this is the start for the next generations onwards forgetting our culture?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear because the public, it's not so audible to this distance. Can you repeat, one of you? Right, yeah, yes, please. Yeah.
Whenever I ask my other Indian friends at school if they celebrate an Indian holiday, they're like, "What is that holiday?" They don't even know what the holiday is.
House. Oh, holidays. Oh, what are your holidays, you know? So, yeah, that's because the parents have not taught them anything.
Yeah, so do you think that this is the start of the next generations onward forgetting our culture?
Yeah. So there are many wonderful books, preparatory books. You can ask your parents or friends in the neighborhood. There are some books brought out by, I think, the Asha Vidya Gurukula. Many of them gives a list of our sacred holidays and the background, a description of why those days are sacred. Like every province in India has its own set of sacred holidays. So, if you come to this temple, you find many seniors, like senior members of the community. You can ask them; they will be very happy to explain to you. Instead of asking your friends, but ask your parents or ask when you visit this temple, you can ask some of these. Oh, how what answer she should give? Well, holidays. Yes, I think every province in India has its own set of holidays. Yugadi, the beginning of the year, Holi, Deepavali, and many such celebrations. So you have to get information about the background. You should be able to explain to them why these are considered to be holy, sacred occasions. So you have to ask your parents. There are books also. In fact, Holy Deepavali you get even from Google.
Actually, the books are available in the temple
Yeah,
office.
here in this temple.
The one of them is Symbolism in Hinduism by Swami Chinmayananda.
Yeah.
Another is Hinduism, a primer. And the third one is Why Do We? There are 3 books available in the temple store.
Get a book copy today itself.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you should be ready to give an answer next time when somebody asks you.
Are you part of the Bala Vihar here? Okay, good. Which level are you? Sorry, Himalaya. Very good. See, that will be a good question for you
Yeah.
to ask your teacher. They will definitely train you. Yeah. Ah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think I think we should come to a close because we had such a beautiful conversation at the end of the talk.
Yeah.
The talk itself was very inspiring, and Swamiji very relevantly brought out such issues of the importance of Swami Vivekananda's work. Today, if we exist here as Hindu temples, so many of them, almost 400 to 500 temples, it's because of the firm spiritual foundations which Swamiji put in 100 years ago in this country. And time and again we should remember that. And then Swamiji had good words for our temple in celebrating Swami Vivekananda Day as an annual day function. And I think this is something which every temple should take up. And some of the questions were so good. I think you brought up very nice aspects about Hinduism. One of the issues came up was secular teaching. Second one was the traditional teaching. And the third one, this child was asking, how do I teach the other Hindu kids who do not know about this? So these are all the challenges we as a temple, we as a community, we as elders with some knowledge of the Hinduism should take up. Because we seem to be caught up with a lot of issues. Swamiji, you were probably aware of this. What is the core Hindu teaching? And what is this disconnect between the temples and the religious educational centers like Chinmaya Mission or Ramakrishna Mission? There's so much disconnect. Look at the Christians, how they have thrived in India. They took up 2 important things: education. They opened the schools, they opened the hospitals, and today you have a sizable number of Christians following who are also converts from Hindus. So there are a lot of issues which need to be dealt with in a progressive fashion. And this lady here was so nicely brought up that she failed. Did you say that the grandkids could not learn the Hinduism? That you did so much, you learned so much, your child was able to, but the grandkids. This is the challenge the temple authorities, the trustees should take up. What is it that we are doing wrong? Why are the children not getting the message? We spend so much money on so many things through the year in temples. And there are so many temples, and it is a question of ego for every town and a city to have a temple. But we need to introspect time and again, hey, how have we come onto this stage? What is it that we can do in future? What needs to be done? I think that kind of a thinking, a contemplation is missing in many of the temples. As I see, I have traveled to other temples and also participated in the interfaith activities which you rightly brought up. It's very important in this day and age, particularly since what happened last year, that we as Hindus get involved in the mainstream. Our children in the schools are exposed to a totally different aspect of Hinduism. A lot of bullying and a lot of violence, verbal or physical, whatever. So I think the temples have, you brought up a lot of issues, and also from the interaction so we as temples have a lot more responsibility and a lot of ground to cover. Swamiji, the thing which you really brought up in the public life and the private life in India and America is very nice. It's amazing. I mean, it's really one of the amazing thing which you brought up, that the public life is so organized here as opposed to India. Actually, I have a lot of nephews and nieces. They ask me, what aspect of Indian heritage that we should be proud of? Is it the medieval period? Is it after 1800, or is it after 2000? There is a big problem in our thinking about what is our real culture. Is it before the 12th century Hinduism? A lot of it, what we talk about is that. But what happened after that, and how do we transform? So I think there is a lot to be learned and going forward. We are so divided. There are so many paths talked about, and each one is trying to establish and then suppress the other path within the Hindu pantheon itself. That is the greatest obstacle to progress I see. There is no uniformity in our understanding of the core principles of Hinduism, which can be taught to the children and also talked about. Anyway, thank you for a patient hearing. I think this is very interesting that you brought up so many issues, and it's such an auspicious day today to think about all of these aspects, and I'm sure everybody will be involved in temple's affairs. One of the issues is involvement. If we don't get involved in the temple committees, talk to the authorities, make them understand, the game will be lost. It will be more of the same. So that's from my experience. I can tell you, I don't want to prolong anymore. On behalf of all of you, it's my pleasure to offer a word of thanks for Swamiji. Swamiji has come all the way from San Francisco. Swami is a great scholar, and he also taught Sanskrit in many of the Ramakrishna centers in India. He has also written a lot of articles and critiqued them, and I hope Swamiji will come back again to Pittsburgh and speak to us on several other scriptures in future. On behalf of SV Temple, it's my honor and privilege to offer him word of thanks, and also as a token of appreciation, a small gift on our temple, from our temple. Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you all of you.
I think the lunch is arranged in the small auditorium, and we'll go to the small auditorium. Thank you.